Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, especially Chibu, for inviting me. And when he and I first talked, it was just exciting. I used to think I was energetic, and I've decided it's tough to keep up with somebody like him. I don't even have a chance. So, but no, I call this maximizing your gratitude attitude. And I will say this is a very interactive conversation, if you will, for about an hour. And I have a lot of exercises and so forth. And so if your camera is on, that's great. If your camera is off, that's fine too, but you may want to use the high five or the thumbs up or the clapping or one of those indicators if you'd like, because I'm going to ask you some things as we go along. It's also, as I mentioned, very interactive. So it's important that you have a piece of paper or a pad of paper or a pen and your cell phone, because we're going to need those as we go along. So, but to get started, I will tell you very briefly, September 29th, 1998 was a Tuesday morning, and I woke up and my two sons, Connor and Kyle, were 4 and 14. And we went downstairs and we found my wife had passed away at the age of 38. And she had unfortunately passed away from a prescription pill overdose. It was very unfortunate. Connor was 4, Kyle was 14. And because of that event, which has now been 23 years ago, I had also lost my mom when I was in my 20s. And then I lost my father a few years later to suicide. And I had enough death and enough tragedy. I thought, I'm going to have to find something that's going to help me to deal with this, something that's going to help me cope. There's so many destructive and deadly coping mechanisms out there that it's just so sad how many people are dying and they're just trying to cope with some of the trials and tribulations of life and so forth. So, but it starts with this, and that is, it depends on how you look at something. It all depends. And when I'm in person, I do some exercises with, I'm in Las Vegas. I did an in-person presentation yesterday. It was really exciting, about 500 people. And we're getting back in person, as Chibu said, next year in November. It sounds like NursesBond will be in person too, which is so exciting. Zoom is great, but there's nothing like having that energy of being in the same room together. But it does depend how you look at something. Everything that you do, when you got out of bed this morning, it was a choice to get out on the left side of the bed or the right-hand side of the bed, be in a good mood, bad mood, up, down, positive, negative, grateful, ungrateful, whatever it is, it's a choice that you make. And I'm never quite so sure why we're so quick to anger. We're so quick to anger, and you see all this road rage, and yet at the same time, we're so slow to happiness. And gratitude is all about happiness. Gratitude turns what you have into enough. I'll probably say that 2 or 3 more times. Gratitude turns what you have into enough. It's such an important mindset. There was a recent survey that came out, and there's all sorts of surveys, but this recent one said 90% of the American people were unhappy. And I think that's so incredibly sad. So, but it does depend on how you look at things. And we all get a choice, as I just said about getting out of bed. I live in Seattle, as Chibu said. And there's across the lake, there's a floating bridge, and over on the other side of the lake is Mercer Island. And Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and some of those high-tech guys live there. And I was in a foot race years ago, and I'm running across the floating bridge. And I'm about halfway across there to get to Husky Stadium where the race ended. And I look, and there's a lot of people in front of me. And I thought, man, I'm not doing that well. And then I turned my head and I looked behind me. There's just thousands of people all the way back to Mercer Island. And I thought, wow. And I turned around and I thought, here's what's interesting. If all these people in front of me were not here, I would be in first place. I mean, what if they just hadn't happened to go today? Oh, my toe hurts. My foot hurts. I just think I can't make it today. I would have been in first place. So it just depends on how you look at something. So it makes such a big difference. I'm a pilot too. I'm going to talk about a couple of airplane stories, but in flying, when you fly from point A to point B, you're never flying in a straight line. You're always making what we call minor course correction. So it's like a little zigzag line that would go from Seattle to California, as an example, or something. So it's so important to make those judgments. So first exercise we're going to do, the next thing we talk about how you look at something. The next thing is, how do you look at you? When you were brushing your teeth this morning, you saw that person in the mirror. What kind of relationship did you have with you? We're going to talk about ways to improve that through gratitude, because the better you have a relationship with you, the better everything in your life works. So I want you to go to a piece of paper. I'm going to give you about 60 seconds for this exercise. And I call this the you are exercise. And that you want to write down these 2 words somewhere in the upper left-hand corner. You are, Y-O-U-A-R-E. Just somewhere in the upper left-hand corner, you are. And so now for 60 seconds, here's what I want you to do. It might be 45 seconds. I want you to pretend you are your biggest cheerleader. I don't know who it is, your husband, your wife, your your mom, your dad, if you still have your parents, your best friend, whoever is your biggest cheerleader, I want you to be them for about the next 45 seconds. And I want you to write down as many things that they would write to describe you. You are cheerful. You are happy. You are tremendous. You are talented. However they would describe you, write as many words that you can that they would say about you. 45 seconds, go. Okay, and stop. And I'm sure that cheerleader could write a lot more things about you, but we got to keep on schedule here. So as you wrote those down, it took you 30 to 40 seconds to write those down. I want you to just read through them again. As you read through those words that they described you, your biggest cheerleader said about you, by show of hands, either to the live stream or a thumbs up, how many people feel better after they read that list? Give me a thumbs up or a high five to the screen if your camera's on, clapping hands, whatever those might be. I see thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. That's great. Thumbs up. So
that was easy.
Yes, it was easy, because that's how quickly gratitude can change your mindset. Because what are you doing? You're focusing on, thank you for all those reactions. You're focusing on your blessings and your abundance and the great things that you bring. Somebody asked me one day, how come you don't ask somebody to write their shortcomings? I said, what do you think it is? Is Downer Dave's hour? I mean, for gosh sakes, your shortcomings, what kind of presentation would that be? But I would suggest if you do that, when I do this in person, as I did yesterday, we have partners and I put it on a 3x5 card. If you have a moment, put those things on a 3x5 card or some sort of card, and you may want to put it on your bulletin board or your refrigerator or near the computer or something. And when you're having a down day, you look at that. That's a 60-second example of what focusing on your blessings can do for you in terms of your attitude. It's so important. I will go through my entire life. I've been on the planet 7 decades. I will go through my entire life, never understanding why we're so hard on ourselves. I don't understand it. I don't understand why we say, oh, I love the meal you cooked. Oh, yeah, but the potatoes were overbaked. You know, I love your sweater. Oh, I washed the car with it this morning. It's like, what? Can't people just appreciate what you say and then just say thank you? So it's so important. For years, I would call myself a word. I noticed that people talk and say things to themselves they'd never say to a friend. We call ourselves names. We'd never call our friends those names. I used to call myself a word that I don't say anymore. In fact, I won't even say it. I'll spell it for you. And I used to call myself an LOSER. And one day I finally stopped and I thought, what is wrong with you? If you don't advocate for yourself, who's going to advocate for you? So it's so very important to think about the words that you say and the self-talk. We'll talk about that. That's one of my 10 takeaways at the end. Your mouth speaks, your 2 ears hear it. Be very conscious of what you hear, especially what you say, because your ears hear it, especially your self-talk. So next, you're known by the company you keep. It's very well known that one bad apple will spoil the whole bunch. A rising tide raises all boats. But it's really interesting. If you want to get to be better at tennis, play with a better tennis player. I'm sure you've heard that in the past. It's so important. But I think that there's something about who you hang out with. I think it was Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it's so important. And I think that if I look back and I think about, I saw this little sign and I was working at the university bookstore and I was going to the University of Washington. And I saw this sign in my boss's office. And I thought, oh, that's the dumbest sign I've ever seen. And then one day I realized years later, that sign wasn't that far off. And the little sign had little lettering that said, you meet respectable people where respectable people gather. If you're looking for mountain trout, don't go fishing in a herring barrel. I thought, wow, that's pretty good. You know, if you want to get mountain trout. So it does depend a lot. So here's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to write this down, and we're not going to time it or anything, but I want you to think about this. I want you to think about reevaluating some of your associations. And I'm going to give you 4 things to just consider, and you can just write down maybe one word or one name rather, and we're not going to go through it. This will take about a minute. I want you to consider somebody in your life that you may want to disassociate from. If you don't have anybody, it's fine. You might have one person, you might have two, but maybe somebody that just every time you're with them, you notice the litmus test is after you leave them, you're not in that good a mood or you're in a worse mood. So maybe there's somebody in your life, maybe it's one, maybe it's nobody if you're fortunate, but maybe one person, two people, whatever, that maybe you should disassociate with. That's number one. Number two is maybe one person, maybe two people that you want to limit your associations with. I think of this sometimes when it comes to family. I've got a sibling that I'm just not particularly wild about, and he's always going to be my brother, but I tend to limit my associations there. Number three, one or two people, this is my favorite, you want to expand your associations with. I'll give you an example. Chibuna Wobia is somebody I want to expand my associations with. I love that guy. He's just the best. I've never, like I said, I think I have energy. He makes me look like I'm in slow motion. So one or two people, maybe even three people that you want to expand your associations with. And number four is maybe one person that you can mentor or they can mentor you. Somebody that you can help. I've had many mentors in my life, and now at my age and with what I'm doing now, going around the country speaking, I've had a chance to mentor many people, and it's so exciting to help people and really have them look at you and go, wow, nobody ever took the time. Nobody ever took the effort to show me how to do something. You're the first person that ever told me this. You're the first person that ever showed me how this worked, and it's so very good. So at the end of the, and the thing is too, is one more quick thing on the association evaluator I call that. And that is, if you're going to disassociate with somebody, you don't have to be a knucklehead about it. You just don't get back to them as much as say, listen, let's get together sometime. Or they say, let's get together. And you go, let's try to do it down the road. All you owe them is two words, common courtesy. You don't have to say, I was listening to the gratitude guy and he said I should disassociate with you. So he's going to go, who's this gratitude guy? It's nothing like that. You just say, you know what, well, let's get back together some other time and let's just move on down. And then you say to yourself, I'll move on down the road. But that's just common courtesy. So it's so very important. So next, harnessing gratitude's power. How do we harness gratitude's power? NursesBond. Yesterday, I spoke to the Immunoglobulin National Society, a bunch of medical professionals, nurses, practitioners, healthcare professionals, pharmacists, and so forth. And I was saying to them that, you know, it's that I think we pretty much know it in the healthcare world. Two people go into a hospital with the same disease. The positive attitude lives, the negative attitude dies. They've proven it over and over again. But it depends on how you look at it, as I said earlier. And so if you have a positive attitude, it can help you physically, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. So I mentioned earlier that I was flying. So I'd flown. So in my late 20s, early 30s, I learned how to fly. And I remember when I was on about halfway through the lessons, it took me about a year and a half to learn how to fly. And my instructor on this particular day says, today's lesson, David George Brook, you are going to be grateful. And he used the word grateful way back then. You're going to be grateful that you paid close attention to me today. And I said, what is it, Jay? Why? And he said, because today's lesson is about instrument flight rules. What happens when you get into the clouds? When you get into the clouds, your stomach, your brain, your whole body's going to tell you something, but it's not going to necessarily tell you the truth. What's going to tell you the truth are the instruments. Always believe your instruments. Do you get that, David? I said, yes, Jay, I get it. Are you grateful I told you? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So about 6 months later, I'm flying along. I've got my three friends with me in my little airplane. We're flying down to the Washington coast, just zipping along just fine. All of a sudden, the storm comes in. I get inside of a cloud in a huge storm. I can't see anything, and I'm just scared to death. And I look over and my turn and bank indicator, and the plane is in a 60-degree bank turn to the right, getting further towards 90. And I think I'm straight and level. So I have a major case of vertigo. And I thought what Jay Diddy said, you're going to be grateful if you listen to me. So I turned on the heading bug, which turns the plane back to straight. The plane turned back to straight, and I thought I was upside down. I was so confused, but I remembered what he said. And my friends, they're laughing. They have no idea how close we were to buying it. That's what happened to John F. Kennedy Jr. And I kept pulling up on the stick, and the stall horn was kind of sounding. I was so scared. Finally, at 10,000 feet, we got above the clouds. We went back to Seattle. I said, I don't think we're going to load lunch today in Ocean Shores. We're going to go back to Seattle. It literally saved my life. That's how important it is. So gratitude can do so many things for you. That's an example for me I will never, ever forget. My gratitude tip around this is I'm so passionate about exercise. You get to be my age and upward, and any age really, but exercise is so incredibly important. Take a walk every day and have a gratitude thought for your day. Make it, that's my tip. Go out and go for your walk and think about, what am I grateful for today? And make that part of your daily routine. So it's so important. It'll make such a big difference in your life. So next, I want to talk about the science of gratitude. And here we are again in the medical profession. And I think it's so important to think about the science. And I'm going to read this to you. I already talked fast as is, but I want to talk to you about some of the research that's been done around gratitude. And this is what it says. Appreciating what we have measurably improves our relationships, our life satisfaction, our health, our sleep, and it improves our physical health, leading to fewer aches and pains, lower blood pressure, and less depression. So important there. Grateful people are more likely to take care of their health, exercise more often, and schedule regular checkups. Gratitude reduces toxic emotions like envy, resentment, frustration, anger, and aggression, and enhances positive emotions like empathy, caring, and sympathy. Too much of our time is spent pursuing things we currently don't have. Gratitude reverses that and realigns our priorities to appreciate what we currently have. Happiness is rarely constant. So although happiness is a fantastic goal, gratitude for the tools that get you there are more important. How easily we can lose sight of everything we have to be thankful for when the circumstances of life become unpleasant. Think about the last 18 months. We are our own worst critics, and we hold ourselves to impossible standards, and we continually compare ourselves to others. That's a no-no. Science says that the more you choose positive and kind words to describe yourself, your health, your body, and your progress, the less anxiety you will experience. Think about that UR exercise that we just did. It makes such a difference when you're focusing on that. So that's just some of the things around the science of gratitude. There's a lot of things that have been proven too. So I will tell you that it's something I've always believed in is it takes as long as it takes. You can never give up. Winston Churchill, never, ever, ever, ever give up, I believe was quoted as saying that. And it's, you think about a time in your life that you really faced some really big things. And I know that, for instance, with Connor, my younger son, he was 4.5 when Dana died, and Kyle was 14. And I had to take Connor, to a person to sort of do an assessment. They said, he's not doing very well. And they said, well, his mom died 6 months ago. And I said, and we've all lost, and Kyle's struggling, I'm struggling. And they put him through all these tests. And then she comes out at the end and she says, he's not going to make it in life. And I'll never forget that. And in fact, someday I'd like to track down that person. And she said, and so I go back to the car and I'm crying. And Connor goes, Daddy, what's wrong? And I said, it's nothing. It's nothing. I just got something in my eye. And I'll never forget that. But Connor wanted to play baseball, and he learned from his father and his older brother, you can't give up on anything. And he kept trying, but he just couldn't really play. As I've always said, he couldn't hit, couldn't throw, couldn't catch, couldn't run. Other than that, he was actually pretty decent. But the thing is, we're playing T-ball, and he's like hitting swinging the bat in the air way above the tee. And I said, Connor, hit the ball on the tee. He keeps looking up at me. He finally lowers the bat. He hits the tee, not the ball, the tee. The ball falls off, and he says, Dad, I got to hit. I went, that's not the way the game is played. I appreciate you trying, but we go for 8 years. He never plays. I couldn't believe it. I come to the practices, the batting cages, but he kept trying. He kept coming out to the field, all the many exercises and batting cages, things that they had. Finally, on May 24th, 2005, he's 11 years old. We're in a game, and it's the bottom of the 7th, and there's 2 out, and his team is behind 7-6. There's a guy in second, a guy in third, and there's no batters left. So the coach looks to the assistant coach, and he goes, is there anybody left in the dugout? And the coach goes, yeah, Brook's down here. And I went, great, thanks. So he goes, send him out. So Connor comes out, and he's swinging the bat like he's Ken Griffey Jr. or something. Think he's never even been up. And I'm in the stands going like this, like, how about a bunt? How about a hit by a pitch or something? And I'm thinking just anything. He gets up there, ball 1, ball 2, comes up to a full count. The next pitch comes in. He rips it down the third baseline. It goes into left field. The guy from third scores. The guy from second comes around third, comes down to home. Here comes the ball. The ball comes into the catcher. The catcher catches it. The guy from second, who's now at home, they crash together on the plate. The ball pops out. And they win the game 8-7. And he's standing out at second base, way out there. And I hear, Dad, I got a hit. I went, all right. And they won the game. They went on out to second base, carried him off the field. I told him later that night, I said, Connor, It was never about baseball. It's always about the fact that you just can't give up. You can't give up. And after I lost my mom and my dad and my wife and a number of other things that happened to me, I decided you just have to take that attitude. And one of the things that gratitude will do for you is keep you moving forward, because you're constantly focusing on what you have. Forget about what you don't have. Constantly focus on what you have. As I said, I'll say a few times, gratitude turns what you have into enough. Next exercise, go to your pad of paper. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you 60 seconds for this one. I want you to write in 60 seconds, and it's going to seem like a big exercise, but we're just going to do 60 seconds worth. I want you to write down as fast as you can the most memorable events of your life. I don't care if they're personal, professional, family, kids, trips, vacations, whatever it is. Write as many things as you can that are the most memorable events of your life in 60 seconds. Go. Okay, there's 60 seconds. Now that's a big assignment. So here's what I'd like you to do. With a thumbs up to the screen, I want you to promise me you're going to do something and you don't even know what it is yet. I want you to promise me, give me a thumbs up or a high five to the screen, as many people as possible. Thank you, Rain. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you. And that's how you can tell a good friend. A good friend says, I need a favor. A good friend says, absolutely. A marginal friend says, what is it? They'll decide whether they can help you or not. So thank you for that, for all of you coming up. Here's what I'd like you to do. A week from today is Sunday, October 24th. Today, a week from today is the 31st. I would like you a week from today to convert that list of one of three things. How many fingers? 3 fingers, Dave.
3.
A top 25, a top 50, or a top 100. Depends on how long you're around. My list was 100 because I've been around a long time. And I put it in priority order. And my gratitude tip is put it on an Excel spreadsheet or a Word doc or something where you can move it around. The number one thing for me was the birth of my son, Connor. The number 2 thing was adopting my son, Kyle. And on down, speaking to 10,000 soldiers. I've done all these things. And the reason I think this is so powerful is on those days when you're not feeling that good and you look at all the things you've done, it might not be just top 25, could be 50, could be 100. You will feel better. And one day I was thinking, oh, I've never been to Greece. I've never been to Italy. And I was kind of going, what are you doing? Why are you going down that path? Look at all the things you've done. You learned how to fly. You owned your own airplane. I was a millionaire at 30. I was dead broke at 35. That taught me a lot. I had my kids. I had all these different things. I raced a go-kart. I did skydiving, scuba diving. I was a national champion hiker. I went, oh my God, I've done all these things. Why are you focusing on things you haven't done? So it's so important. The gratitude tip is hold on to that and look at it. Look at that on those days when you're not doing that well. So next, it's so important to make room for gratitude. You got to clear out your brain. I've been into these developments with these houses and they've got the 3 garage doors and they're just stuffed with boxes. And I think, aren't those garages for cars? And here's all these boxes and they're just crammed. And I think, man, that's a lot of stuff, but you need to make room for things. And I've often saw this so simple. Somebody says, well, I want to change my life. You know what you do when you want to change your life? You just change your life. It's just so simple. If I want to change my life, then change it. There's no magic pill here. So one of the things but you've got to get gratitude in there and you got to get rid of some of the junk. It's so important. We're virtual today, but when you get in your car and you get in that windshield and you see the windshield's about 2 feet deep and about 4 feet wide, and then the rear view mirror is about 2 inches by about 6 inches or so, that's how you should look at your life. Mostly what's in front of you. You can glance in the rearview mirror to pay attention to make sure there's no blue lights. You might have to pull over, but glance a little bit behind you, but don't drive over stuff in your life and then pick it up behind you and put it in front of you again. Move it on. It's behind you. It's the past. That's why the windshield is so incredibly important. I was working at Nordstrom, as you heard in my bio. I was a store manager for Nordstrom, and then started with a small store and medium store and got to the big stores with about 500 or 600 employees. But when I started, everybody at Nordstrom starts at the bottom and you work your way up, and then they pick you for these different jobs. And I was managing the suit department. I was having all sorts of success. And one day I'm in the lunchroom and this guy comes up to me, and apparently I was kind of intimidating for a few people. And he says, "Can I talk to you a second?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "I want to tell you, you know what the word is? You know what the feeling is around you around the store here?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Everybody thinks you think you're hot, S ends in T." And I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, everybody thinks you think you're just like the cat's meow, whatever." And I went, "Wow." And he goes, "And one of the things is you never talk to anybody. You just come in here, your little shiny shoes, your little fancy tie, your little pocket square, and you're running around with your little briefcase. You win all the contests." And that's how I got promoted, is because I'd sell the most and kept moving up. But he says, "But you don't talk to anybody." And I said, when I extended my hand, his name was Steve Soray. I extended my hand to Steve. I said, "Steve, thank you. Thank you for having the guts to come up and telling me that." And I thought, you know what? People say you can change in 30 days, 20 days, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, whatever. I don't buy it. I think you could snap your fingers and change right now. It's 8:13 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. I think you can change now to 8:14 Pacific time. And I walked out of that lunchroom and I became the friendliest guy you've ever seen. I started saying hi to every single person. I knew every single person in that store. When the escalators crisscross like they do in the Nordstroms, it doesn't slow down to say hi to people when they're going by. "How's everything in Lady Shoes? What's going on in Brass Plum? What's going on down there in the cosmetics department?" I became the friendliest guy possible. And I think that's how fast you can change. And it was so important. And I think that had a lot to do with me getting further in this life too. So it really, really makes a difference. And so don't buy this thing. "Oh, it takes me 30 days. You could snap your fingers and make a change." So make a change, get rid of the junk in your brain, allow gratitude in there, and it'll help you so much. Next, I want to talk about 4 very important things. Find yourself, find your talent, find your passion, find your purpose. And I think I said it earlier, but it's so important. This relationship that you have with yourself is so important. And I think that, and you look at it, and we know it. So I said the self-talk thing, watch the self-talk. But if you keep focusing on your gratitude, your relationship with yourself will increase. And when your relationship with yourself increases, your entire life works better. It's just a fact. Everything works better. If I asked you, we'll do a little exercise to think about yourself from 1 to 10, and 10 is the best. If you're a 10, your life works better. If you're a 1, your life doesn't work very good. So gratitude is one of the things that can really help with that. So very important. I mentioned I'm in Las Vegas to do this talk yesterday. Then I knew I was speaking to NursesBond today. And I was thinking there's gambling around here. And I remember I was in Reno probably about 15, 20 years ago with a friend of mine. And we were doing slot machines and playing blackjack. We'd see a show. It was just kind of the guy's weekend. And so one day he puts a quarter in a slot machine and he wins like $1,000. And the quarters are just crashing down. I think it's tickets and stuff, but it was just crashing down. He goes, Brooker, my nickname. He goes, "Look at this." And his arms are in the air. And he goes, "I'm buying dinner. Isn't this fantastic?" And I'm watching all the quarters come down. I'm standing just to the left of him. "This is fantastic, Rand." And it occurred to me, and I thought, I'm so happy for him, but I'd be just a teeny bit happier if it was me winning $1,000. And people look at me like, "Wow, that's it's the truth. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not trying to scam anybody. I'd be a little happier if it was me. I wouldn't mind having $1,000 from a 25-cent investment." So that's how important it is. But I keep saying that relationship, when you understand yourself, when you know yourself, it's so important. So I look at this $20 bill, and I'm going to see if it kind of shows on there, because I've got my virtual background going. On this $20 bill, if I was to hand this through the camera, see if it's looking there, I think most people would take this $20 bill. If I just said, "Here, it's yours, just take it." Then if I did this and I crunched it up and I put it there, would most people take it? I think most people would. If I put it on the floor and stomped on it and crushed it and everything, and then I smoothed it back out again like this, I think everybody would take it. If I just said, "Here, I'm going to pass it right through Zoom, you can have it." So if I look at Andrew Jackson, who's on the $20 bill, and I say, "Listen, Mr. Andrew Jackson, I think you're full of crap. I don't think you're very worthy. In fact, I don't think you deserve to be on this planet at all, because I think you're absolutely worth zero." Mr. Andrew Jackson would look back at me and he'd say, "Well, Mr. Speaker Man, you can say whatever you want because I'm still worth 20 bucks. And he would be right. And so my question to you is, why in your past have you let somebody crush you, step on you, tell you you're not worthy or not deserving to be on this planet or whatever they've said, or worst of all, devalue you from 20 to 15 to 10 to 5 to the worst of all, 0, and get away with it? One of the ways you can counteract that effect from people that have done that, it's happened to most all of us, is gratitude. The more you have that relationship with yourself, the better the whole thing works. So it's so important. We're going to get to the gratitude journal in a second, and that's going to have another aspect of how it impacts how you see yourself. It's so very important. So that is finding you, your talent. Make your strengths productive, make your weaknesses irrelevant. I don't understand people that work on their weaknesses. We all have talents. I can speak. I've spoken to 10,000 soldiers in Joint Base Lewis McChord in Fort Lewis, Washington, but I can't draw a circle to save my life. So I'm not going to go out and get some art class and try to figure out how to draw something. You know what? I'm a speaker. I do other things. I have a lot of energy. I have things like this, but I'm not going to worry about the weaknesses. Make your strengths productive, make your weaknesses irrelevant. So very important. There's all these things you can't teach. You can't teach experience. You can't teach confidence. You can't really teach common sense. I can't stand somebody who's a know-it-all. That's kind of a tough one. It's hard to deal with sometimes too. But you can't teach somebody to be grateful. You have to figure that out for yourself, which is why I'm giving you some of these exercises. It's so important. I figured out a long time ago that I must have leader or something stamped on my face or my forehead or something, because I was on a jury once and there was 12 people and I was probably in my 30s, I'd say. And I think I was working at Nordstrom, but at the time, I just wore jeans and sweatshirts. I wasn't necessarily well dressed, but you couldn't talk to the other jurors. So after the case is over, it's assault with a deadly weapon. We go into the jury room and the bailiff says, okay, so you're going to want to take a straw poll and see what you think, guilty or not guilty. You're going to want to elect the foreman, and then come and see me if you need any exhibits, any of the things that were presented in the case. And so the door closes. And that was easy. Yeah, it was easy. And 10 of the 11 people point to me. We go, we want you to be the foreman. I just went, great. Hi, my name is David Brook. Let me show you how we're going to do this. But that doesn't mean that you can't pivot too. When you're finding your talent, sometimes it doesn't work. And I know when I was 12, I wanted to play drums, and it was in Hutton Grade School in Spokane, Washington. And they fill out the little card, David Brook, and my address. What do you want to play for your instrument? I put drums. And then it says number 2. I don't have a number 2. I want to play drums. And so I get this and okay, all right. Well, what can I put? I'll put trombone. What the heck? So I put trombone. Then I finished the rest of it. I signed it and I'm waiting in line. And finally it's my turn. And I come up to the table and the guy says, okay, David, nice to see you. You want to play drums? He's from the music company or something. He says, okay, here, listen to this pencil. And he takes a pencil and he does like this beat. Something to that effect. He goes, now do that. And I said, okay, yeah, no problem. So I kind of go like this. And he goes, trombone for this boy over that way. I went, oh, thanks. So I have no rhythm. So clearly I never got to play drums. So sometimes you just have to pivot. I couldn't play soccer, but I was playing soccer. And one day the guy goes, look, you're going to be on the team. I don't know if you're very good, but all I know is when you get the ball, just get it to somebody else. Don't try to be doing something yourself. So I somehow end up over by the goal. This ball is coming at me. I'm running like crazy to get out of the way. It hits me in the face, gives me a bloody nose, and goes into the goal. And they come over. Oh my God, that was the best header. I was running for my life. Are you kidding me? There was no header. And I got blood dripping. And you even got a bloody nose. I'm like, soccer was not going to be my deal. So you have to figure out what your deal is. So that's where the talent comes in. The passion is next. I'm very passionate about gratitude. You can probably tell. But what are you passionate about? Maybe maybe it's all the things in the the medical field that you're in. If it's not, think about what you would do if you had $1 million in the bank every single day, or what did you want to do when you grew up? Or maybe what would you do if you worked for free? It's just so important, and it's never too late. I was 62 years old 9 years ago. I'm 71 and I was 62 and I came home and I decided I am going to be a speaker. I wanted to be a speaker when I was 19 years old, back in 1969. I went and gave a talk at a high school. And when I came back in my car, I thought, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a motivational speaker. I was 1969. 43 years later, I'm working at Lowe's. I'd left Nordstrom, done a bunch of other things. I managed a big Lowe's home improvement store. And I decide the time has come. So I come home, it's 2 p.m, December 26, 2013. Connor, my younger son, is 17 at the time. He goes, what are you doing home? And I said, well, I quit. He goes, you quit Lowe's? And I went, yeah. You quit being the store manager? And I went, yeah. And he goes, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I'm going to become a speaker. And he looks up from the couch and he goes, well, that's just super, Dad. And I went, I wasn't quite expecting that. And he goes, I have a question for you. What are we going to do for food? I just went, Connor, trust me, it's okay. It'll work out. So you never know. It's never too late. All these people, Ray Kroc McDonald was in his 50s. John Houseman was like 71 when he got an Oscar after starting acting. Mary Kay Ash, Sam Walton, Colonel Sanders was 63 when he started KFC. So I don't know how old you are. It's never too late. I started at 62. It doesn't matter. You can start and make it happen. And so that's what's figuring out your passion. Once you figure out what your passion is, you're probably going to figure out what your purpose is. I feel if you have a great connection with yourself, and then you actually figure out your talent, and then you figure out what your passion is, you're probably going to figure out your purpose. I think people are hardwired to figure out what their purpose is. I think it's just part of how we're built. And I think that you can see what happens when people lose their purpose. There was a coach for Alabama named Bear Bryant. He had 4 national championships in football. He retired. 6 months later, he passed away. Joe Paterno was a coach at Penn State, and he got in some trouble up there. And like 7 months later, he passed away. Andy Rooney was on 60 Minutes doing the final little piece at the end. He retired. I think it was in his 80s or 90s. He passed away like 3 months later. So in fact, I saw a survey recently that people that have a purpose that get older in life live on average 7 to 10 years longer than people that don't. So I think it's so important. I've got most of my friends are retired. They're extremely boring to me. I've had to limit some associations with some of them, as I said earlier. A couple I've disassociated with, because I'm going to be doing this in the late into my 70s, 80s, and 90s, God willing. I'm extremely passionate about showing people how gratitude can change you. We're going to talk about gratitude journal next, which is so important. It's kind of the centerpiece of what I talk about. And I think that I want to hang around people that have a purpose and that really want to make a difference. And it's so important. And I know that I had a friend that was working at Boeing. We have Boeing up in Seattle building the airplanes. And she'd say this all the time. They'd cut out this, and there's a lot of employees, 50,000, some big number. And they'd cut out the retirement little notice, and they put it on a bulletin board, Fred Smith, left wing assembly. And then they'd have a piece of yarn, and the yarn would go to the right-hand side of the bulletin board. 3 months later was the obituary. That's how many times people lost their purpose and then passed away, and they're no longer working at Boeing or whatever. And I think it's interesting. I was on a podcast and somebody said to me, what do you think the 2 most important days of your life are? And I have a podcast every Tuesday, and Chiba was on my podcast, was a great, phenomenal guest. So I have phenomenal guests, and then I'm a guest on other podcasts. And the guy asked me on the podcast, what are the 2 most important days of your life? And I said, well, I don't know. I think that's pretty simple. I think it's today and tomorrow. You can't do anything about yesterday. Today is all you've got. It's the present. It's a gift. We have it. I'm present with you right here at 8:26 a.m. on a Pacific Standard Time morning on a Sunday morning. And I said, and I think then tomorrow is what you're looking forward to tomorrow. And he goes, well, that's fine. He says, but I have a little different feeling. And I said, what's that? And he says, I think the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And it just I went, wow. It just kind of hit me, and I went, man, because it took me 62 years to find out my why. And my why is showing people how and why gratitude can change your life and be such an impact on you. So next subject, a gratitude journal. It's so important. I ended up selling a lot of these yesterday. I sell them, and you can get it. I'm not seeing if that's going to show again. It's on there, but sometimes I got this virtual screen going here, but it's called That Gratitude Guy's Daily Journal. And also you can get it on Amazon. You can get a a spiral notebook, whatever you want to do. It's so very important to have this journal. And I'll tell you about this again. I don't know if you can sort of, looks like you can see it, but it's formatted and there's a template on this that you can have it all set up. So gratitude today, it says your day and your date, the daily number. We're going to do an exercise on that in just a second. You have 2 lines for your current events and special occasions. So you know what you don't have to have a diary. And then you have 4 or 5 lines for what you're grateful for. There's 2 lines for your highlight of the day. We'll cover that in a second. And then on the right-hand side is your gratitude intentions, which is for your gratitude for tomorrow, which is what you're grateful for that hasn't even happened yet. It's so important. It makes such a big difference. So here's what I want you to do. Go back to your pad of paper again, get another part of it or another space. We're going to do an exercise that kind of explains how a gratitude journal works, because I can't hand one through Zoom and give you the journal. So I want you to think about your daily number right now. What is your daily number? Well, I'm going to say from 10 is the best day of your life and 1 is one of the worst days in your life. So that's kind of your gauge. So I want you to kind of take your temperature right now. And maybe you're a 7, you do halves, maybe you're a 7.5, maybe you're having a tough day, maybe you're a 5. Hopefully we don't have anybody that's a 1 or a 2, but if you are, that's just what you are, but you're not going to share it with anybody. So whatever that daily temperature is, whatever that daily number is, I want you to write that down and put a circle around it. And that's just kind of establishing where you are at this very moment. And then next, I want you to write numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, because you're going to write 4 things. So just write numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, right below your daily number. And I will give you about 30 seconds on this first one. And that is, I want you to write it number 1. If you could only pick one thing you were grateful for in your entire life, put that down at number 1. Number 2, if you can only pick 2 things. And number 3, the top 3 things you are most grateful for in your life, write those down at number 1, number 2, and number 3. Okay, number 4, I'm also going to give you 30 seconds on this or so. What was the highlight? It's 8:30 on the East Coast or the West Coast. So wherever you are, what was the highlight of your day yesterday? What was the best thing that happened to you yesterday? You might take a moment to think about it. That kind of made your day. Write that down at number 4. Okay, hopefully most people have that. I always try to gauge how long. I know sometimes it takes a moment to think, let's see, what was the best thing about my day yesterday? A lot of times for me, it's hearing from one of my 2 sons. So whatever that is, that's at number 4. All right, now here's what I'd like you to do. It took you 30, 40 seconds, whatever, to write those down. I want you to reread again, number 1 thing you're grateful for, number 2, number 3, and the highlight of your day. And after reading those 4 things, I want you to write another daily number at the bottom of those 4 things. Could be the same number or it could have changed. Whatever that is, write another number at the bottom of those 4 things. All right. And then with of course, the famous high five to the screen, I've got about a half a dozen people that are on live. And then the people that are cameras off, you can do the thumbs up. By a high five or a thumbs up in the virtual people, how many people's number went up from the top number to the bottom number? High five, thumbs up, clapped hands, whatever. How many people's number went up? Let's see, Rain, Lisa, Dulces, keep going. Oh, that's fantastic. Of course, my favorite thing.
That was easy.
Yes, it was easy because there's another example of how something like that. Thank you for all those thumbs up. There's another example, and I even like the heart too, of how quickly you can shift your mindset. So imagine if you, and it bugs me that this doesn't show as much on the virtual thing. You know what? I'm going to hold on a sec. I'm going to do something. This is bugging me. I'm going to go back to, I'm in my hotel room. We're just going to be in the hotel room. I don't care. Now you can see it. You saw the Gratitude Guy logo there, much better. And so this takes 5 minutes to write in it every single day. 5 minutes. I've timed it in many, many times. Oh gosh, once in a while it's 6 minutes. So if that impacted you that way in 60 seconds, what can 5 minutes a day do? It's so, so very important. And I think that it makes a difference. As I mentioned, I was live yesterday, and people come up to the book table and they buy the books and they tell me their stories. It's just gratifying to listen to people. And one day the guy grabs my own. Of course, I write my own, and I never miss a day, ever, ever, ever. Do it every single day. I already wrote early this morning before I even went into the shower and spent my 5 minutes talking about how grateful. My highlight of my day was my big talk yesterday. It was just tremendous people and tremendous response and so on. And the guy looks at this journal. He says, "Is this your journal, your personal one?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can I look at it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but don't look at it too closely." And so he kind of thumbs through it like this. And he goes, "Wow, you write in this every day." I said, "Were you listening to the talk? Were you in the room? Did you pay attention to anything?" "No, I just write in it occasionally because you see, I just want to feel good occasionally. You, however, I want you to write in it every single day." But it's interesting. My other journals used to say the Brooker on it. Now says That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. And I used to be called the Brooker. That was my nickname. And so my buddies would always call me, "I want a dose of the Brooker. I need to get some inspiration." And so now they call me, now that I'm a speaker and doing everything that I'm doing, traveling the country. It's so exciting. "I need a dose of the Brooker." I said, "Listen, before we go any further, don't give me the dose of the Brooker. Have you written in your gratitude journal yet?" They go, "No." So I just hit the phone. I just hang up on them. I just, bam, off. And so then like 10 seconds later, the phone rings. "I think we got cut off." "No, we didn't. No, we didn't. I hung up on you. Go write in your gratitude journal. And then you call me after that. Because you know what? I'll be your training wheels, but I'm not going to pedal your bike. You got to do a little work here. I think the good Lord gives you a toolbox. I think you have to build the house yourself. I kind of think that's how it works. So it's so important. And one of my gratitude tip for a gratitude journal is, even if you wrote one word, if I put Chibuna for inviting me, I'm so appreciative of him, and NursesBond, if I just wrote one word, it's better to do less than you hope for than nothing at all. So if you even wrote one sentence every day, one word, 3 words, you wrote 3 words in the highlight of your day a little bit ago, it's so, so very important. Also, another little gratitude tip I have, people ask me, when is the best time to write? I always write first thing in the morning. I've been prone to depression and having to deal with things. My mom was manic depressive, and I got pieces of that. So I fight it by exercise, water, vitamins, gratitude journal, hanging out with positive people, making a big difference in the lives of people, and so on. But I notice if it's ever going to hit me, sometimes it's the morning. So the best time for me is to write in the morning. Plus, I think it kind of sets your tone for the day. I think it's just so important to just kind of think about, what have I, what am I grateful for as I start my day and get ready to go? So here's a couple of questions. So that's it on the gratitude journal. You can get my gratitude journal on Amazon. It's That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. And it's really a positive thing. And it's something that's like it's in my right pocket almost all the time. So here's something I want to move past the journal, and I want to talk about. Oh, one more quick thing on the gratitude journal. Another thing I like about it, if you can't sleep at 3 a.m, you're having a tough time, you grab your gratitude journal and you look at what you wrote that morning. That'll help you get back to sleep. It's so many things. That's what I like about some of these tools. They're just really, really helpful. So I know what I want to do. Write this phone, write this phone number down, 206-371-8309, 206-371-8309. What I'd like you, that's my cell number, the same one I hung up on my buddies on. I want you to text me and tell me what you're grateful for. I want to know what was number 1 on your list. What was the thing you were the most grateful for? I always like to poll my audiences and see. 206-371-8309. What is at the top of your list, and what is resonating with you that you are most grateful for, that you're thinking, boy, if I put it at the top of that list, or if I was to write in that journal starting today, that's what I would write. Please send that to me, and I will appreciate that, because again, it's just fun for me to just kind of get the flavor of what people are thinking about too. And I mentioned my mom was manic depressive, and she finally got lithium, which helped her, and so that made a big difference. But I got pieces of that, and it was really frustrating to me to have to deal with that. And so she would call me, and she'd take a bottle of pills and she'd shake them, and she'd say, "I've got my sleeping pills, and I'm going to take all these sleeping pills if you don't come over and see me in the next hour." It was really tough. And I told my brothers and sisters later how many times she did that to me. But but she eventually got lithium and it was okay. But I got pieces of that. So one day I was doing a talk that morning. I woke up and I was probably a 2. Now that you see how I established the daily number, it was probably a 1 or 2. I was so depressed. And I thought, well, you better practice what you preach. So I took the gratitude journal and went to a Starbucks, got a latte, excuse me, wrote in my gratitude journal. And that bumped me up to about a 4 or 5. It helped me a little bit to really focus on what I had that I was grateful for. Then I went and I did the talk, and it was about 75 miles north of Seattle. And when it was done, this lady came up to me. It's the first time I had heard it. I hear it a lot now. And she said, "You changed my life today." And I went, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she's kind of crying. "Can I give you a hug?" She gives me a hug and she goes, "I want to get a journal for me, and I want to get a journal for my 2 sons." And so I noticed that when it was interesting, when it was done, I walked to my car and I sat in my car and I went, gosh, I'm like now a 10. I went from a 1 to a 2 to a 4 to a 5 to a 10. And what did I do? Did I take some drug or have a drink or any of this other stuff, all these coping mechanisms that people try to use? No, I wrote in my gratitude journal and then I changed some lives. And I thought, wow, that is incredible. And it just shows you the power of how, when you want to help people, if you help other people, what a difference it'll make in your life. So very, very important. So quick questions. Thank you for all those texts too, because I really like to see how people are, what they're feeling grateful for. A couple of great questions to ask yourself. You may want to write these down if you think about it, but what makes you feel happy? I think that's so important. You know, people, they said 70, 90%, whatever that was, people aren't even happy. What makes you happy? And then number 2, what zaps your energy? So what are the things you don't want to do? You know, what are the things that just drain you? That, when I think about that association evaluator, that's a good example of that too. And then next, and we talked about this, what's your passion? So if you think about, let's see, what makes me happy? What do I want to do to make me happy? What do I not want to do? Because that's going to zap my energy. And what am I passionate about? If you align those 3 things, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, because it's going to help you focus on the things that are positive in your life. And then maybe you can blend all 3 together. And it's so important. So I want to talk about a couple more things, and I'll be done in about 10 minutes, but I've got a couple more exercises that I want to do too. I think it's really important too to think about, I said this, self-esteem. Every time you think about your self-esteem, the better your self-esteem is, the better everything works. Your self-awareness, your confidence, and so forth. I remember going down to a shoe shine, a gentleman that I had in Seattle, and I get my shoe shine there, and he's really nice. And I always said, I don't know what got a better shine, my shoes or my brain, because he always had these really cool things. But he had all these pictures of all these people that were really well-known people in Seattle. It was like the mayor and the city council guy and all these captains of industries and men and women and stuff. It was really, really cool. And I just noticed that, I said, man, everybody must come here. And he goes, yeah, you know what they all have in common? And so well, let me guess. And so I went, successful and wealthy. And, I was guessing all these things. And he goes, no. And he kept saying no. And I guess maybe 10 or 15 characteristics. And he goes, no, he says, I'll tell you what they all have in common. They never talk about themselves. And I never forgot that. I just thought that was so cool. They never talk about themselves. When you feel good about yourself, you don't feel this necessity to talk about people, to talk about yourself rather. And it's so interesting when I tell people about how in listening, the 2 most important things that you can do if you want to be a good listener is these 2 3-word phrases. If you got nothing else from the listening, or maybe even this besides the gratitude journal, remember these 2 3-word phrases. If you use these when you're listening to people, you will have more friends than you'll know what to do with. And the 2-word phrases, the 2 3-word phrases are tell me more. So when people are talking to you and they keep talking, just keep saying, tell me more. They'll be done at some point. You don't have to inject yourself into the conversation. And the other 3-word phrase is, and then what? Very, very similarly. It's so, so very important. And I love to practicing the golden rule. I try to always mention that the golden rule, according to Webster's, is the ethical principle of treating other people as oneself would prefer to be treated. I think it's so cool if you practice the golden rule. But when you're getting back to when you're listening to people, it's so important. I tell people we're talking to somebody and I'm talking to somebody and then somebody else comes up and I said to the person, what did you do? And they go, we just went to Hawaii. This happens all the time. Another person comes up and they go, how you doing? And I said, John was just telling us about it. He just got back from Hawaii. 9 times out of 10, the other person, oh, that's so interesting. My wife and I just got back from Hawaii a couple of years ago, and we were there and we went surfing. And I said, and I've had to stop people and go, hey, hold on a second. We're not talking about you. Okay. We're not talking about you. We're talking about John. John will be done in a second. When John's done, then you can come here and you can tell us your story about Hawaii. But it fascinates me how people want to inject themselves like, look at me too. And it's so important. So I just think it's so interesting. And another thing, when you talk to people that I think is really, really critical is, here's 4 things I would never say or never start a sentence with. You should, you need to, you have to, you gotta. Those 4 words. Never say that, especially you should. I get people all the time that they're not even speakers. They come at me, you know what you should do for your presentation? You know what you should do for your talk? And I want to go, oh, but you're not a speaker? Oh, you are? You're not a speaker? Oh, okay. Well, thanks. Well, I'll definitely take that into consideration. But when somebody says you should, there's just sort of a natural barrier that goes up, which I think is so, so very important. So, but think about that. And please remember the tell me more and then what, and you will become a very good listener. So next, I want to talk about how you can get more gratitude in your life. It's so, so important to me about how people say, well, listen, this is really fantastic. And in 1 minute, one thing I say before that, I want to talk about something else that really helped me. If you don't have this, I think this is so important to go with your gratitude practice, is a meditation practice. The human body can go 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without oxygen, but only 3 seconds without a thought going through your brain. Your poor brain is just inundated all day long. Imagine if your brain could talk. What? What are you doing to me? Are we ever going to rest? Or listen, why do you talk so fast, Brooke? What are you doing? Can you just relax for a second? Just imagine. So the meditation practice is so, so very important. And I know that you wouldn't drive your car with your gas pedal on the floor all the time and expect it not to blow up at some point. So, but people ask me, how can I get more gratitude in my life? A couple of things. The gratitude journal, as I said, I don't have a link, but I'll send it to Chibu and he can send it out, but the link for Amazon too. You can also get it on my website. My website is thatgratitudeguy.com. So that's pretty easy to remember. I am, after all, that gratitude guy. And then also, here's something too. If you would like to, every Monday morning, so you don't have to raise your hands, but get your cell phones out if you'd like to do this. Every Monday morning, I send out the Monday Morning Minute. It's a 60-second video that goes out to, I don't know, about 10,000 people now. And it's kind of to start your week off on a positive note. So if you'd like this, grab your cell phones and go to your text and go to the number and text the number 22828. That's 5 digits. Excuse me. 22828 is the number. And in the message box, type in gratitude guy. And that will link, it'll send you a little welcome and you'll put your email in and I'll send that to you. So the number is 22828. And the message box says gratitude guy, all one word. Excuse me. Gratitude guy, all one word.
Tell me more.
What's that?
Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me that. Tell me more.
It means that time is up.
The time is up?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I thought I had 5 more minutes. Didn't we start till 10 to the hour? Seriously?
Okay. Round up, sir.
Okay. All right. Last thing. Here's what we're going to do. I'll be done in 2 minutes. Share some gratitude. Yeah, we started with just a couple minutes. I looked at my clock and it was 10 to. Here, grab your phone again after doing that little exercise. Here's what I want you. I want you to share some gratitude. I want you to text somebody in your life and tell them how grateful you are to have them in your life. This is how we'll close. I want you, whoever you want, send, and make sure you put the word grateful in your text. I'll give you about 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Text somebody and tell them how grateful they are in your life. Whoever you want, go. And then we'll wrap up. Okay, and I'll tell you why you're finishing those texts. The kids in school talk, you can do like 6 or 7 texts in about 45 seconds. So the nursing homes, I have to like help them do one at a time, but it's always fun because when I'm done, after they come up, when we're in person, like you guys will be next year, they come up to my book table and they show me their phone and they go, look at this text. And the text says, I'm grateful for you too. What do you want? I'm like, man, that's not very nice. I'm just showing I'm grateful for you. Another one showed me the phone from the text and it said, are you sure you sent this to the right person? I thought, man, I think it's the right person. But I was in my last comment, I was in a hall, sort of a concert hall. And there was a lady sitting about 10 feet, and I call it the 4 T's: text, tweet, teller, telephone. And she was telephoning her husband, and I could hear her from the podium. And she says, honey, I'm just so grateful for you. And she used the word grateful. And I just love you and I appreciate our life together. And I'm just very, very grateful. I don't know. Some speaker just told me to call you and tell you. Don't say it's me. Are you kidding me? It's you. Don't say that. So it's so important. Can you send flowers too often? Can you be too grateful? I don't know, but I will tell you, if you put gratitude in your life, it changed my life. It transformed my life. And in many ways, it saved my life. As an example, in the airplane and after the deaths I incurred, and it can save yours too. Thank you very much, NursesBond.